excited for our presentation today, and we're excited that all of you are here to join us. So I'm going to be able to go ahead and introduce, we have Steve Palmer today. Not only is Steve Palmer a proud Aggie, he's actually a past student body president of Utah State. He's the founder and CEO of Thrive Life, one of the largest food freeze-drying companies in the world. He founded Thrive with another Aggie, Jason Budge, and we're so excited to hear about what they have to say about their company, leadership lessons, and where they're going to go from here. So please welcome me in welcoming Steve Palmer.
So in 2015, November, my CFO walks into my office, named Sebastian, really good guy, and I can see something's wrong. The blood's out of his face, he's been emotional, and he says, "We have a problem." No problem. What is it? We can get past this. We have these sayings in our company, these gut-wrenching moments of impending doom. What's next? We can take it. And he said, "No, I don't think we can this time. This one's pretty serious." See, we had just invested pretty much everything, like any entrepreneur would. We just put it back on the table and invested into a brand new technology, for us anyway, called freeze drying. And he said, "I've been crunching the numbers, and our sales have shifted to a point that I'm a little bit nervous that we may not be able to make it." He said, "Well, how nervous are you?" He was like, "We're not going to make it." I said, "Oh boy, that is not what I expected." I forgot to get the clicker. I'm guessing that's over here. Thank you very much, Julia. Julia has been awesome this week getting me prepared for this. She only had to email me 4 times to get a response. So let me just tell you about me first. We'll come back to that moment. My family and I, we live in Alpine, Utah, nice little place in Utah County. We are proud Aggies, and we display a 10-foot flag on a regular basis with some honks and some angry neighbors from time to time. But we have a room downstairs called the Aggie Room, and the Aggie Room is all things Aggie. We just love to bring people in and talk about Utah State. It doesn't feel like very long ago that I was here, that I was a student in your same place, and I have such fond memories of this valley. To be able to be in this room and look across it, just this flood of memories comes to me. I tried to find some fun pictures from my time here at Utah State. We didn't have digital cameras. Even 20 years ago, there were not digital cameras. All the pictures I had were a little bit suspect of... I've got to make sure my kids, before my funeral, they know this was staged, this wasn't real. But we had some fun here. But I was in a class similar to this. There was an entrepreneur locally. His name was Mike Tullis. Mike was the founder of the Anniversary Inn, if you've ever heard of that company. And he was assigned to teach management human resources, 1,500 or something like that. I don't think we talked anything about human resources that entire semester. He did the old throw the book away, and every single time we came to class, he would talk to us about the problems of running a business. And you would think that would be depressing, but this was like the class I wanted to attend. I was like coming every single time and realizing maybe there's something to this. Maybe this is what I want to do. And by the end of the semester, he got a standing ovation. I've never seen that in an undergrad class. And I think he was emotional about it. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. I want to be this guy. I want to be an entrepreneur. So I quit school a year early. I've now since repaired that. But I ran out and started a company with another Aggie named Jason Budge. He's not here today, but another good friend. Our company wasn't called Thrive Foods back then. Let me just give you a quick overview of the company. It's grown a little bit in the last 10 years. This is where we expect to end by the end of this year. It gives you a little bit of an overview. So we're here in American Fork, Utah, but we have plants soon to be in 5 different countries. I'll talk a little bit about that. Our mission, the thing that gets me out of bed every day excited to be an entrepreneur, is that we fuel life's important moments. We believe that the foods that we manufacture, that they do great things, that they support good memories, that whether it's a pet treat and the experiences you have with your animals, whether it's one of our backpacking meals and the time you spend in nature, we really believe that this is our mission. And we talk about this before every major meeting. We review this with our team. So how do we do that? Well, it might surprise you, but we're just darn good at freeze drying. Some of you, just raise your hand if you knew what freeze drying was before coming today. Wow, that actually blows my mind that this many of you have heard of this. I thought there'd be a few of you. Yeah, freeze drying has, in the last couple of years, really become more mainstream. I'm going to give you just a quick overview, a little video of our company. It's one of our brands called Thrive Life, and this will give you an idea of what a freeze dryer looks like.
This is Steve. This is Jason. They both like food.
I've been eating since I was, well, little.
And we really haven't stopped.
Steve and Jason are not alone. Everyone eats, but there's a problem. In order to eat food, someone has to prepare the food.
Think about it. Who prepares the food you eat? A restaurant? A grocery store?
A nice neighbor.
Really?
But in most cases, that person preparing the food for you is Mom.
I've made over 10,000 meals in my life, but really, who's counting?
Me, I'm counting.
Moms are busy, way busy. Of all the things moms have to do every day, feeding a family is at the top of the list called things that stress mom out.
We felt like there had to be a better way. Something less stressful, but still meaningful.
There was something easier, quicker, and even healthier.
We do simple, clean food.
Steve and Jason decided to build the most state-of-the-art freeze-dry facility in the world.
Turned out pretty good.
This was a huge breakthrough. Before these guys came along, freeze-dried food was mostly found in trail mix and dry cereal. But they took freeze-drying to a whole new level.
Well, freeze drying isn't rocket science.
It kind of is.
Well, that's true. That's because we take something from a near perfect state and take it right off the vine. We lock in the taste, we lock in the nutrition, and we lock out all the bad. And that's why it's so delicious. It will literally hang out in your pantry until the night you need it.
Tonight, tomorrow night, a few weeks from now, really whenever you need it.
I just said that.
Freeze-dried food is very snackable, but the real magic with Thrive Life is in understanding how easy it is to cook with. Instead of this, you have this. And instead of this. Mom, congrats. With Thrive Life ingredients, you just made a family favorite meal in half the time. Take the rest of the night off.
I can sneak veggies in pretty much any meal. It's super awesome.
I don't even have to sneak it in. My 5-year-old snacks on broccoli.
But Steve and Jason didn't stop there.
For moms, it's not just about preparing the food.
It's thinking about what to make, making the list, finding the time to get to the store.
And so they launched Simple Plate, family-friendly meals that are planned, prepped, and ready when you are.
It's taking away the stress, but it still lets Mom get creative in the kitchen.
And maybe best of all, it's not going to spoil in a day or two, or even a week or two. It's in your pantry, ready when you are.
With the introduction of Simple Plate, Thrive Life is providing ingredients and meals to families across North America, helping families have it quicker, easier, healthier, way quicker.
It's so much easier, quicker,
We're much healthier.
Quicker, easier, healthier.
A better experience.
We had a lot of fun shooting that video, probably more fun than it actually did benefit our company, but this was one of our brands, and it gives you an idea of what freeze-dried food is. Basically, we're taking moisture out of products, making an indefinite shelf life that retains most of the properties of food. And it turns out there's lots of applications where that is a useful process. I want to talk, first off, I think we set the ground. The foundation of our company is really on the guiding principles. And I think every company has guiding principles, right? It's a little bit cliche. You see it on a website, hard work and trust. And we wanted to have these stick. That we wanted these to mean something. So we took an idea from football, and we have these cards that we can hold up and say, all right, well, one of our principles is integrity. So remember the compass. That's our true north, right? That's how we become good at making good decisions that impact people in a positive way. We treat people well. We want to make sure that we're not treating people like objects and sending those emails that say, hey, figure this out or else. We get done what matters most. This is a stamp. There's a story called The Letter to Garcia. Garcia was a general in the Spanish-American War, and no one knew how to find him. So there was one guy, though, if you gave him the letter, he could find Garcia. So at times you'll hear in our company, hey, let's just get the letter to Garcia and figure this out. Who knows what this is? Who's seen this? What is it? The All Blacks. They're a rugby team out of New Zealand, and they are one of the very best, if not the best team professionally in the world. But they have a really cool saying that we sweep the shed together, meaning there's no heroes on our team. The bench warmers and the stars, we all clean the locker room at the end of the day, and we win as a team. We win together. Kaizen, as some of you in business classes have seen this, right? Continual improvement. As a manufacturing company, this needs to be, you have to be really good. It's not a destination, it's a process of becoming better. And then we chased big goals. This was Roger Bannister. He's the first person to break the 4-minute mile barrier. I know there's some runners in the room that I've seen here. And he was the first to do that. Funny thing is, after he did it, 13 more people did it a few months later because they realized it's doable, we can do this. And so we're always chasing that next big goal. But our company wasn't called Thrive, it was called Shelf Reliance. And we actually made, in 2004, shelves. That's what we did. We had a couple of shelves. People would come into our showroom, and there's the shelf. And we would, early on, we were baking cookies and had sodas, and we would crowd them, and they would say, oh man, there's just a shelf here. What else do you guys do? This is all we sold. Fortunately, Walmart and Costco and Bed Bath & Beyond, we started to get our products into some of these larger chains that really helped us to bring in capital to grow our company. But at some point, people would say, hey, why don't you sell food? You sell these products that seem built for food, but you don't have any food. And so we had the hubris as entrepreneurs to say, well, yeah, why not? So we talked to the FDA, got some good consulting in, and we started putting food into canisters. But we discovered freeze-dried food. This was our first exposure to this product, and we thought, this is pretty good. But people are using it to store for a rainy day. They hide it in a bunker or whatever. And why don't we try to see if they could use this in regular, everyday meal prep? It was one of our first thoughts. We got this great big blimp. In Utah, food storage means emergency preparedness. Out of Utah, it means Tupperware. This is a little bit of a difficult thing for people to understand, but we would fly this above our warehouse, above the freeway, and about every 6 months, somebody forgot to tie it down, and it flew over the mountains. There's a couple blimps somewhere east of Utah County. I'd like to believe there was a farmer in Omaha that walked out his door, saw that in his field, and it was like a message to him. I'm going to go into Tupperware. I don't know. But we've lost a few blimps. But our strategy was really built on this one-legged stool approach. It was just emergency preparedness. And up until 2012, we thought we were geniuses at marketing. We thought we were so good. Everything we did came back. But something happened in 2012. It was this change of the entire industry that you had a presidential election, you had Hurricane Sandy, and according to the Mayan calendar, the world was going to end. Didn't happen. A lot of people, though, were really focused on building their emergency preparedness, and then we had this weird letdown that happened the next year. And so we doubled down, we spent more. You can see more of the same. It didn't really work. Well, in that 2011-2012 time frame was about when we had gone big into building a freeze-dry facility. And so we built this beautiful building, and we put freeze dryers in it. And then that brings us to the story I started with, the CFO coming into my office this dark day in December. And it gets darker every time I tell the story. I think of like rain clouds, and it was probably at 10 p.m., and it was an awful night. And I remember I went home that night and told my wife, it's finally happened. I've bankrupted our company. I am positive that I have done something we are not going to recover from. And she's here today, front row. And Amy was actually really supportive and said, no, we're going to get through this. We've had these before. We'll figure it out. I didn't believe that for a couple of days. And it took me a while to really want to face the reality of this. And this is the worst experience I've been through and the most important experience that I've been through as an entrepreneur. This is where I think I was really forged and learned that you have to accept sometimes the reality of outcomes, and that the goal is to learn from mistakes and failures as fast as possible, these iterations that allow you to grow and become better. Fortunately, whether you want to call it fate or providence, for me it was an answered prayer. I found somebody that was all the way over in England that I had come out and tour as a consultant, come tour this facility. And I said, hey, we're not going to make it. Do you have any ideas of what we could do? And he toured our facility, and he looked at these freeze dryers we put in, and he said, and he was kind of chuckling, he said, I don't know who sold you these, but you didn't buy food freeze dryers. You bought the top-end freeze dryers that'll do backpacking meals, that'll do probiotics, that'll do all these other products you've probably never even heard of. And I said, that all sounds great. Whatever we need to do, let's figure this out. So for the next year, we rolled up our sleeves, and we really started to make these relationships and figure out a way to help our company grow out of this problem. I realized, though, that I needed to make some changes internally, that I had really somewhat ignorantly taken on an industry that I didn't fully understand. I thought I had done diligence. I thought I had created a business plan that was going to work, but I realized I needed to go back and figure things out. I needed to become good at something. So I recruited my dad, an old CEO, and I had him become my mentor. My first time of having a mentor, and he would come every week, and he would coach me and give me feedback, which was so helpful. I read every book he gave me, every business book I could find. I went back and got my MBA from the University of Notre Dame. That was great. In fact, 2 people in this room talked me into it. Thank you. I didn't know you'd be here, but I went there because of them, Jim Davis and Chad Mono. And had a great experience there, and then went on to another program at Harvard Business School that really helped me to understand specifically what I needed to focus on as an entrepreneur. And I decided that if I was going to be good at one thing, it was going to be strategy. That's going to be what I can, stake my flag in. This is my skill. I wasn't great at, really good at anything, but this is where I decided to focus. So that one-legged stool approach needed to change. And we quickly realized that there were ways that we could invest into different market segments that would allow us to be successful in a way that would counterbalance these different markets. So when the emergency market is changing, maybe that's not impacting the probiotic market. So we looked at it like a portfolio, the same way you would look at a stock portfolio, a mutual fund. Mutual funds are meant to hedge risk. And we decided to use the same approach, that we would take several positions in markets that were unrelated so that when one market was impacted, maybe the other one was growing. And that strategy has proven to be exactly what we needed to grow. Interesting fact, if you go back to the COVID days and you look at what we had invested into prior to COVID, I mean, ingredients isn't going away. I'll share more about that. Pet treats, everyone bought a dog during COVID. Probiotics, we all needed gut health to become healthy. Emergency prep, COVID, that was not a problem. And backpacking meals, everyone went to the mountains because no one could get into Disneyland. So we just thought, again, we were geniuses. We had to temper the ego a little bit during this, but we picked the right number. So what is our goal? And I'm trying to be transparent about who we are, and I think it's helpful. I had a good friend in business school who said, "You think too small." And that, no one likes to hear that. He said, "You think in millions, but I think you need to grow your paradigm and become think in billions, think in bigger numbers, have bigger opportunities." So to become the biggest company in the world for freeze drying became the goal. And for me, this was an Everest type goal, right? The biggest. I wanted to climb Everest for a long time. My wife was supportive till I told her that 2% die, which sounds, for an entrepreneur, that sounds like great odds, but she said, no way. So I'm never going to get a chance to do that. But everyone who studies, if you know who has climbed Mount Everest, they always have guides, right? They have Sherpas. They have people that help them, that have been there. And one of my life lessons in business has been that to be successful, you have to surround yourself with key mentors and Sherpas, if you will, people that know how to help you become successful. So for me, that's been our executive team, first off. We have a world-class executive team. We've had to really focus on finding those people. Sometimes there's not a great fit. Sometimes you have to look further. We just recently hired a new CFO, the bottom left. He is the CFO that just came from Foster Farms, a $3 billion company that focuses on chicken. So we've looked for people like that we have no business talking to. But knowing that if we're going to become the Everest type company, we really needed to have somebody who's already been to the top a few times. That's who we look for. On top of that, we went and recruited some of the very best people we could find in our industry. This is the dream team of freeze dry, if there's such a thing. It's probably the only team for freeze dry. There can't be many of them. We have, starting on the left, we have a gentleman who is from England living in China, one who's from Denmark living in Brazil. We have a Chinese national living here, another Englishman, and then our most international from California. She has been awesome. These are people who really understand the science behind what we're trying to do and help us to innovate and to become successful. So we defined the Everest goal as a $1 billion opportunity. We want to be the $1 billion company. There's no one in our industry that's done that before, and we felt this could be really what we talk about. So how do you do that? There's a number that you would remember if you're on our team. Anyone on my team could tell you this. And by the end of this presentation, I bet you could tell me this too. But 720. That's a 3-year plan, $700 million in revenue with a 20% EBITDA. And that's our equation that gets us to an enterprise value of $1 billion. This is what we talk about when we start. Whenever we make a decision, we say, is that really 720 or is that past our 3-year goal? But this is something we talk about constantly as a team. It drives me. I have a countdown app on my phone that I look at on a regular basis. I know that on the 31st of December, 2024, a lot of people are going to call me and say, did it happen? And by then, I hope our sights have changed to something else and we've already passed this, but it's definitely motivating. To get there, we need to do it through two types of growth, inorganic growth and organic. Organic meaning your sales are just growing year over year. Every company needs to have a good growth model. But also inorganic growth, meaning that we're acquiring new companies to help us grow as quickly as we can. Anytime you talk strategy, you're looking at it from the perspective of your competition. And for us, we went and mapped out who are our competitors, what do they do, what do we do, where do we think we can really compete. And we decided that there were 4 areas inside the United States that we needed to have coverage to be able to service all the customers in these different segments that we'd identified. We quickly found that this was going to be an ambitious goal, but to be the biggest in the world, you have to think outside of the United States. Now, much of our product, our raw product, comes from places like Eastern Europe or South America. And so to plant product there, to bring it here to freeze dry, and then possibly send it back there doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when you're talking about the environmental impact, but cost, it doesn't make any sense either. So we started to look around the globe and said, where can we put other plants that would make the most sense to us to be able to grow? So our growth rate needs to be 12%. Year over year, we need to grow by 12%. We have been growing at a clip of about 23%, so 12% feels okay for the next few years with the slowdown coming. I talked about a 20% EBITDA, and that we need a multiple of 12, which is where our target is for us to be able to grow. We think our valuation, that allows us to become roughly a $1.7 billion company by the end of 2024, which is really exciting. And at first I was nervous to share this with our team. I thought, what the first thing that's going to happen is everyone's going to say, well, great, I want to raise. But that's not what happened. Everyone started rolling up their sleeves, and we started talking about 3,720 and how does this impact the company? How many new jobs does this create? How many new opportunities does this give the company? And it's really been exciting for me to watch how motivating knowing these numbers has been for our company. We've become transparent. Where the first 12 or 15 years of business, I hid these things. I didn't want anyone to know because of those worries. But I've realized, especially younger generations, they want to understand, they want to see what's happening and be transparent. We were lucky to partner with a couple private equity companies that have really just said, go for it, and have left me alone and allowed us to grow, which has been exciting. Not a lot of pressure they've put on us. And we quickly were able to acquire some of our biggest competitors. Mercer Foods in California, they focus on fruits. We acquired a company in New York that focuses on pet treats. And we're building a facility in Wisconsin right now that'll focus on probiotics, where all the cheese manufacturers are. You can see why that would make sense there. And the name isn't here, but just yesterday we signed a letter of intent to acquire companies in Germany and in Peru, which we're really excited about. Before the end of the year, that'll happen. So that gives us our global coverage now. And to be able to worry about logistics in a different way now, that just adds a whole new element to us, to what we're able to do for our customers. So the Thrive brands, we have our own brands, things that we've built. Those are exciting. We also manufacture for other people. This is I'll do just a quick little video here and show you one of our brands, which is a backpacking line called Peak Refuel. Every entrepreneur will tell you that success also there is some portion of luck involved. And one of the things that happened to us during COVID was our biggest competitor ran out of product. And we had a company called REI call us up and say, is there any chance that you guys would be happy to work with us? And we were like, well, yeah, that would probably be okay. Overnight, they became our largest customer on that brand. And that brand has doubled year over year for the last 4 years, which is really exciting for a brand like that. If you've ever been to Trader Joe's, you may have had some of their freeze-dried fruits. We manufacture those under their name. And this is one that most people have seen. Some people call this the pink drink. If you've ever had this at Starbucks, the pink is us. That's what we do. We sell that. They're our largest customer is actually Starbucks. So to be really good at business, to be a global leader in freeze-dry, we decided that also meant we needed to be great at global stewardship. And here's this company that takes water out of food. We can't do anything with it. Everyone always says, well, what do you do with that water? Well, that water on an annual basis is 10 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So we've never really thought, how do we get the tanks behind our company? How do we fill these things up? Where do we put it? It usually just goes down to the city and gets cleaned. But we decided that we could do something with this water that could be really exciting. In fact, one of the members of the audience here has been on a trip with us to Africa. We have a program called Drop for Drop, where our goal is to replace the same amount of water we take from food and put it into communities where water's a need. And that's very apparent in places like Kenya. Chad Mono and I were on a trip not many years ago where we were able to go and see a reservoir be built that we had put into a community that could service 2,000 people in a population that was forced to go from watering hole to watering hole. Their children, that's all they did all day. They couldn't go to school because water was it, right? To live, you had to have water. And so it was really exciting to see that these things changed, and all of a sudden their kids had lots of free time, which gave us a lot of interesting comments from parents saying, what am I going to do with all these kids that are no longer doing water? The next year we went back and we built a school, which was really exciting. So our goal is to take those 10 swimming pools every year and put them into communities, at least the equivalent of water, so that we can see this water go to good use in a way. And it's exciting. This is something that gets us excited to be working, and our team likes to focus on. One of the reservoirs here that we worked on. So lessons I've learned here in the last few minutes: embrace failure. That's number one. Accept it, embrace it, love it, know that it's part of the process. It still scares me. I still get afraid of the idea of failing, but I realized that without it, you can't succeed. It's an important part. Always have a mentor. Even now, if you're interested in business or if you're interested in chemistry, it doesn't matter. Having a mentor, somebody who's willing to sit down with you on a regular basis and listen to your goals and hold you accountable, there's only success behind that, to have a good mentor. Determining your motives and values early. You saw what our values are, that we value as a company. We make our decisions by those. There's no reason why that can't happen, whether you're a student or you're a business person. To have values is an important thing, to know what your values are. You all have values, but to say these things matter most to me and this is how I'm going to govern my life. Focusing on problems and not people may be the most difficult. And it's hard not to see a problem, and you hear about an $80,000 mistake that happened last week, and you want to say, well, who? And then you realize, okay, let's focus on what happened. Was there a process in place? Was there a system that crashed? What happened? And you find that most people, of course, want to do a good job. They don't make mistakes on purpose, and usually there's another reason why the mistake happened, which has been a really great lesson. Setting big goals. Look for your $1 billion Everest goal. What is it that you're trying to do? Having your personal advisory board. Again, people are willing to do this for free. If you went and found 5 great people that had skills that you wanted to have, I think you could find these people who want to be on your team, your advisory board, and allow you to grow. Never stop learning. And the reason behind this is not because of the things you learn. I believe that a brain that constantly wants to learn and tries to learn, I think that you've unlocked something about accepting new ideas and thinking. And that's a skill set that takes constant learning, constant growth. And then last, measure results, but always adjust. Find ways to see, is what I'm doing succeeding or am I failing? Too often in my history as an entrepreneur, we would throw money into the wind and just assume that it was working. Now we measure everything. Everything we do has to have a return. And so my hope today is, not necessarily that all of you run out and start a business. That would be great. Is really, I'm hopeful that there's somebody in the audience that hears what I heard from my professor years ago, that this is something anyone can do, that you can go start a business and make it as big as you want. Yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, there's going to be challenge, but it's absolutely a fantastic ride, and that it will be an experience that shapes and helps you to grow into the person you need to become. And so with that, I'll just leave a list of books that I love. Books are personal. Sometimes people are like, hey, look, I don't care to know your top 10 movies. Why would I want to know your top 10 books? These are books that have had impact on me, that I've used, that I've read, that have been important. I'll leave this up, and you've got my personal email. I'm always happy to have lunch or sit down with somebody, get on a phone call, and to be one of those Sherpas that helps. There's been too many people in my life that have done that for me not to pass that forward. So with that, I thank you for your time, and I'm excited to hear some of your questions.
Thank you very much, Steve. I think this mic's on. So most of you know me. I'm Mike Glauser. I'm the director of the Center for Entrepreneurship, and we're absolutely thrilled to have Steve with us. What an amazing company and a great presentation. And so we're going to do some questions and answers right now, and Lucas is here. He's going to pass out swag to people that ask questions, I think. And I'm going to start with a question so you can be thinking about what you want to ask, and then we're going to turn the time over to you, and we have just one mic here. We have two mics, one on either side, so feel free to be brave and stand up and ask your question. Steve, we teach something we call the 3 Ps to our students, which is purpose, which leads to passion and perseverance. And we find that if they don't have a driving purpose, an engaging purpose, something that's doing good, that they don't stick with all the hard times. And you talked a little bit about that. How important has that been for you and your team to really feel like you're doing something valuable and meaningful? And how important would it be for our students to find something like that if they want to start a business?
Yeah, and I think whether it's your degree you're focusing on or anything you do, even if you just go out and get a job, if you don't have a purpose behind what you're doing, it's really difficult to get up day in, day out and say, I'm excited to be here. And when you do find that purpose and discover it, and for us it's partially the drop-by-drop Thriving Nations that we do with the water, and also that we fuel life's important moments. Those are the two things that we come back to. And selfishly, that had to be, for me as the CEO, those had to be what really drove me to be excited about the company. And so I would say, how important is it? It's paramount. If you don't have a purpose, at some point you run out of energy, and it's not fun. You have to have something that reignites you on a daily basis.
You think you would have quit several times if you didn't have that foremost in your mind during those?
Oh, no, I have a wife that wouldn't have let me quit. She would have got me back up. But
so
yes,
you need a purpose and a partner, right?
Absolutely. Yep, I have a good group.
Okay, let's have some questions. Don't be shy.
And by the way, the swag that we have on the back on your way out, we have enough for everyone to take either one of our backpacking meals or we have some of our fruits and vegetables. Feel free to grab one of those on the way out.
And I'll have to admit, my wife and I did some backpacking this summer, and we hiked through the Uintas, and we used those Peak Refuel meals, and they saved us. They were awesome.
Good. That makes me happy.
So can you talk about your strategy with ingredients? You talked about that with Starbucks, and what that looks like in terms of a sales and strategy process versus your retail chain and your direct-to-consumer as well, which I imagine you have all 3 of those.
We do. That's a really good question. The way that we looked at our ingredients or our business-to-business sales is that we needed our assets to be funded by those businesses. And these are typically very stable, mature companies. We have a 5-year contract with Starbucks that's set at certain minimums that allows us to feel some comfort in how aggressive we become with our brands and where we focus. So really, they're the counterweight, right? We've got a successful business-to-business model, but it gives us a little bit more freedom to be aggressive with our direct-to-consumers.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Russell. Yes, please.
Hey, Steve. My name's Ian Morgan.
I
know you used to be the CEO of Thrive Life and are now the CEO of Thrive Foods. How's the CEO of Thrive Life doing?
Well, it's your dad. And he is doing amazing. Amazing. Yes, Eric Morgan is another Aggie. We tend to, I'm not going to say for purposes of HR and legal restrictions that we only hire Aggies, but it does help. There's no question. But Eric and I were in a band up here in college, and to be able to hire your drummer to be one of the CEOs of your brands is a kind of a dream come true. So we do jam from time to time.
Awesome.
Fun to see you, Ian.
Yes, over here, please.
So as you were expanding into new products and new business lines, and also like with just the whole startup in general, I noticed some themes from like Nail and Scale It and Lean Canvas with the fail fast and fail cheap. Were there like specific schools of thought in relation to innovation and entrepreneurship that you followed?
Yeah. So first, you've heard the MVP, right? That you're really looking for your minimal viable product of how little can you invest in making sure the proof of concept is there and that it can actually take off. And so that's a skill set I think we've had to learn. You have these ideas and you think, this is for sure going to be successful. I can tell you we've had ideas that we thought were going to be successful that have lost us $1 million that fast. And we've learned over time to say, okay, how do we scale that back? And how do we fail fast and fail cheap and very quickly have 5 things and knowing that only one's going to succeed or maybe none? And so the methodology really becomes scaling back on how big you go and doing more test marketing and hiring great feedback, having companies come in that, it's a lot of money for a business to spend $15,000, but if you can get enough feedback from would-be consumers on that $15,000 to say, yep, this is the right decision, you save the $1 million later on. So it's critical to, especially our brand, we really need that process.
Thank you.
Question back here. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Hi, Steve. My name is Carter Gomez. First, I just want to say I appreciate your transparency with us and your business model and everything. I think that I speak for all of us when I say that was extremely helpful, and that's not something that we see often from CEOs. Just coming in here and kind of giving us your whole plan, that's awesome experience for us. And secondly, I just want to ask, what does diversity look like in your workplace? How do you promote it and maintain efficiency while still, keeping all minority groups in mind?
That's a really good question. Here's my belief, is that diversity, whether it ends up being different cultures, backgrounds, people from different schools of thought, that if you bring people together that all look, think, and act like you, you're going to make bad decisions. You need to have people that really have a completely different perspective that come in and challenge your best ideas and allow you to say, okay, well, I didn't think about that the right way. Sometimes in Utah that can be difficult, but we focus on it. It is something that we say, how do we become more well-rounded? What can we do to bring in more ideas, more diversity? So it's just more of a conscious effort that we've really empowered the executive team, but also HR to say, look, we really need this to be something we're focused on. We don't have quotas or things like that. We're still looking for the very best people we can hire. I also believe that we need to have the best talent, but that doesn't mean you overlook groups or individuals that could have that type of impact that still have really great talent and expertise. Thanks for your question.
Okay, yeah, Chad.
Yeah, Steve, just a quick question. I've seen some interest in doing kind of at-home freeze-dry. How will that affect your business moving forward?
Yeah, when this happened, it came out about 5 years ago, and if you know Porter's 5 forces, we were looking at this as a disruptive force, thinking, yeah, what is this substitute? What does this do to us? Could it impact our strategy? I was nervous when I saw them come out. I can tell you now, several years later, all it's done is the tide lifts all boats, and it's been more awareness of what freeze-dry is. And you have a lot of people, I think, that go and plug those things in. They look at their energy bill, and they've spent another $100 at the end of the month. And it's a lot of cutting, and they don't know how to be food safe, and they just say, forget it, I'll just buy from you guys. So I think it's probably helped us, if anything. It's definitely not hurt us.
Okay, great. What else? Yeah, right here in front.
Well, I'm curious, as far as you said, when REI called, it was because the people that they had already there supplying their backpack meals they ran out of food. So I'm curious, how is it that they ran out of food, a successful business? How is it that you didn't run out of food? And how is it that you were ready and prepared to go when REI made that call?
Well, this is a tough question, and because you have to take positions on customers too. Your best customers are the ones that you have to take care of. Every company goes into a point of scarcity where you may not be able to take care of all of the different needs. We have a supply chain that allows us to carry some backup stock, some safety stock. And to be honest, when they called us up and said we're interested in that, it was never do we have stock, is we're going to figure this out. We will come in late nights, early mornings, call the vendors, figure it out, and we pull off a miracle, which is something entrepreneurs, I think, have to do on a regular basis. But we weren't ready for it. We absolutely weren't, but we made it happen. We got the letter to Garcia.
Yes, please.
Steve, thanks so much for being here. This has been outstanding.
Thank you.
You mentioned a course that you took, a class that you took, and a teacher that really impacted you. Looking back, what was it about that teacher and that classroom experience that changed you? What can you identify as not just an interesting thing, but something that really had you think differently?
I don't know I've ever considered that. That's really interesting. I would say I was attracted to his willingness to talk about failure. For me, that was interesting, right? We don't talk about failure. Fail fast. Who says that, right? You don't get your kids out of bed and say, fail fast today. It's just not something that we bring ourselves up talking about. And that's all he talked about was problem after problem and how he got over it, how they had to think and how they had to solve their issues. So I think it was the thinking that was exciting to me, but it was also he loved business. You could tell he was passionate about it, and it lit a spark in me. I'll tell you a quick side note that years later I ran into him. This is 10 years into the business. I hadn't even thought of him, and I run into him, and I'm like, oh wow, I get kind of sweaty, to like, you were the one that made me want to do business. And he's like, who are you? He had his wife with him, and I talked to him about my story, and I said, hey, I just want you to know you had impact on me, that my life has changed because of something you did. And he got emotional right in front of his wife. It was a really cool moment to be able to tell him how important he was to me. And I've already shared this with some of the administrators. My biggest goal is to come back to Utah State and teach. That's what I will do.
Great. We're excited about that. Okay, what else?
You talk about how you had just such great friends here at Utah State, and I think all these students here are having this fantastic experience. And then you started a company together. And I don't know if you're all still together, but what were some of the benefits and the challenges of going from being college friends to starting a company and the ups and downs of that?
You hear people say don't start business with friends and family. And I don't think that should be true. I think actually you can start businesses with friends, especially if early on it's very clear what your objectives are, what each of you is going to do, and setting expectations of how that relationship works. It doesn't mean there aren't some challenges. There was a day where I was driving he was my best friend, and we were driving after year 2 of a little strategy meeting. We went down to Mesquite and got the $100 for, staying in a hotel where they bolt the pictures on the wall, and it was like a cheap retreat. And I remember driving home, and we were just going at it about pricing of what we were going to sell these shelves for. And I'm embarrassed. He's heard me say this, but I thought while we were driving, if I hit him right now, would we crash? Like, I was so mad at how he was talking to me. And you know what? That's actually been probably one of the most valuable parts of the relationship that allowed us to be successful is we never let the other one off easy. We always challenged our ideas. So the negative is it does change your relationship. We were definitely fly fishing buddies. We still are. But, there's a couple of memories I have of him throwing a marker at me during a meeting. And so it's a different relationship than it was here in school. But I think we're more brothers than we are friends now, and we're definitely still close.
Let's go over here first, and then we'll come back over here, okay?
Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation. I had a question about some of the goals you set for yourself and for the company. What helped you achieve those goals or make that measurement that you wanted to succeed for?
Great question. You've heard about SMART goals, first off. We had to feel like it was something that everyone could be excited about. So we tested that quite a bit and felt like we had a great plan of how we would get there. Now, a question came up not long ago in one of our strategy retreats of, well, we keep saying this 3 piece. What does the 3 mean again for the 3-720? 3 means 3 years, so you remember it. And somebody said, well, we're already in year 2, so are we going to keep talking 3? That's a really good question. That doesn't make a ton of sense, but it's now branded in the company. Maybe we have a rolling 3-year plan. But what I've learned is that plan, if it stays with the CEO, if it's just my plan, it's going to fail. It's dead on arrival. But if you can sit down with a team and brainstorm the plan together and allow it to actually take shape and be better than you had it, I really believe the team will figure out how to make it happen. That it's a shared goal. Because we win together, we also lose together. And that means that every now and then we set goals that don't work. And that's okay, right? Fail fast, fail cheap. We embrace that and we move on to the next goal. It's part of the process. It's iterative.
So I just wanted to ask, you kind of already talked a lot about it, but you have all these great books, all these great mentors, teachers, whatever. Is there a phrase, is there a quote, is there something that, like, no matter what, you just kind of stuck by it since you've heard it, whether it's in times of thick or thin, you have this, like, quote that you kind of turn to, or this thought or this thing that someone said to you that just, like, kept you through it and kept you pushing and kept that entrepreneurial spirit?
Yeah. It's a great question that I was able to speak to. Dean Anderson's wife, Kathy's here today, and her dad had a famous speech called Come What May and Love It. And that's always been one of my guiding stars of, you know what, I had to eventually realize or reconcile that I might fail completely. I may end up failing, too expensive to keep going. And you have to be okay with that. It has to be something that, yes, you live with it and it's constantly there, but I think it's also the pressure that keeps you running and pushing. So for me, that would probably be my mantra. Come what may and love it. I'm going to figure it out.
So it seems like you have like a great team spirit about kind of your company, which like is really impressive, and I think that's hard to find for a lot of people. But what would you say has been like the biggest thing that's allowed you to, I guess, attain that kind of team spirit that your company has?
I think it's really easy to be in the executive suite and shut yourself in an office and be unapproachable. And I think I've gone through phases where I've done that, and then very quickly you realize you're distancing yourself from the company, that you don't know the people that work there. So one of our conscious efforts that we've had to challenge ourselves on and really have HR focus on is how do we make sure that we are constantly together, not just working together and having hard moments. Recently, 2 weeks ago, we took everyone to Midway, and we had a bunch of activities. They could go ATV riding, they could go golfing, they could go hiking. We just brought all these activities and brought the whole team, 60, 70 different managers together and said, we want you to choose one. We're not going to tell you who's doing what. We want you in separate groups. And we measured, again, measure everything before the retreat. How much camaraderie did you feel with your team? And we had low marks, actually. Now, this is one of the acquisitions, so that would make sense, right? They didn't know each other very well. And then afterwards, how well did you feel that you knew each other? How excited are you to work with this team? And it went from low, maybe 60% to 93% on average. It was a much, much higher. So I think there needs to be a deliberate investment into that side, and that's hard. Sometimes you think, I don't want to spend $100,000 on a retreat. We'll just save that. But I think that's the biggest investment you can make, is that you have people that when that next offer comes from somebody, one of your competitors, they think, yeah, but I'd have to leave so-and-so. We're good friends. I can't do that to them. So letting the team be cohesive allows you to really have, I think, the synergies and the longevity that you need.
Okay. Over here, yes.
And so you said you wanted to come back to Utah State University and teach, but you went to Notre Dame. Why did you pick Utah State University over Notre Dame?
For my MBA?
No, to teach.
Oh, I see. Well, look, somebody asked me when Notre Dame plays Utah State someday in 2052, who are you going to cheer for? And that's an easy answer. It's Utah State, right? Utah State is my love. I absolutely loved let me say something about this. I'm glad you asked this because I would like to say this. I've now had a chance to be at 3 great universities, right? Harvard Business School is the mecca of business. And I would tell you that my experience here with the level of professors and experience that I was given here is no different, right? You're going to pay more money and have a different experience on your resume, but I believe Utah State's quality of education was just as good as those other 2 schools, no question.
And I went to Notre Dame.
Okay, we have time for 2 or 3 more questions. Okay, right here. Young man with the cap on.
So you mentioned how you have found all these people from Denmark and China, and you have this great team of people. How did you find those people? How do you make those connections?
Years ago, I was a door-to-door salesman for a pest control company. That's how I put myself through school. And I got really good at recruiting. And I think it's one of the things that I bring to the company is being able to recognize really important talent and being able to connect with those talents and sit down and say, listen, a brief story, one of these, the one from Denmark, he is the chief engineer for the company that manufactures the freeze dryers. I've known him now since we started. He came out to deliver a hard message from the company. They heard we'd gone with a competitor, and he said, look, I need you to know that if you do that again, you can't work with us. I was like, now, is this your message, or your boss sends you on this? And we worked through that, and he said, yeah, I had to just deliver this message. I said, John, are you happy in your job? I think you should come work for us and be our engineer. And within 2 weeks, he had signed the paperwork. And so I think always recruiting, always looking for talent, and knowing that there's lots of talent to bring in. There's no shortage of good talent if you're looking for it.
Great. Another question. Andy.
I've got 2 questions. The first, which is pretty important, is what's the name of your band in college? You're in. More importantly, though, like with the level of success that you've achieved, what do you think the greatest metric is that you personally hone in on? that defines that success?
Blue kilts. Nope, didn't wear them. My son asked me that on the way up. Never wore a blue kilt, but that was the name of our band. And I thought we were pretty good. No one cared about the music. I made the car up on the way. They didn't care about my music. But I would say that the easiest metric, and it has to be, right? At the end of the day, your business has to be viable, has to succeed, it has to have profit, cash flow, all those things are important. Cash is king. You'll hear those things. But ultimately, what is most rewarding and most impactful, I think, are those mentorship moments that you have on your own. I've had a chance to be a mentor to several people, and to be able to see that same light go on and see the excitement and realize that anyone can do this, that's probably the most important metric. That probably sounds very canned and cliche, but for me that would be, if at the end of life I say that's where my metric of success was, then I think I'll be happy with it.
About one more question. Okay, in the very back there.
So I'm wondering how you've grown your company internationally. How do you keep that open communication where you're dealing with different cultures and ideas of business? It's not all the American way of thinking or the Utah way of thinking. Like, how do you keep that? How do you avoid culturalism and keep your communication open and positive?
That is a really, really hard thing to do. And so from the international perspective, we've really tried not to, we aren't talking about changing these cultures and coming in and saying, hey, it's the Thrive way, and you know who Garcia is, and we're a little bit different there, right? We really feel that way about our 4 plants here in the U.S., but the 2 that we're bringing on that are international, we are going to find a way to we call it best of both, the Bob model. And what about Bob? We always talk about that. What can we take that's going to be helpful, but we're going to be very careful what we give. We don't want to disrupt what they're doing so well. And for the sake of branding, it probably doesn't matter that they are the Thrive way. What matters is that they're part of the family and that the synergies exist and that we can grow together and that they see us showing up for support from time to time. But your question is an important one. Communication is the hardest thing of running a business. And I have plenty of, I can tell you all day, all the failures I've had of miscommunicating. But it's something you have to constantly focus on and work on. And we really emphasize it as a team, that we are transparent with each other, we're open with each other. As part of the integrity model is that you have to be upfront. And we just try to get better at it.
We're going to have our Dean, Doug Anderson, come up now. And thank you so much, Steve. That was really, really awesome.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you.
So we're just going to take the last few minutes here to try to embarrass Steve a little bit. Okay. First of all, let me just say this. We're enormously proud of you, Steve, and what you've accomplished and your love of all things Utah State and Cache Valley and being an Aggie and so forth. I wish John Huntsman were here today. As you all probably know, John passed away 4 years ago. But he would have been so proud of not only of what you've accomplished, but also the values you represent, Steve, and also your great love of this university, and your sense that, the young people in this room today can achieve incredible things. And John felt the same way about this university. And so when John and I were first talking about what the Huntsman School of Business could and should become back in 2006, today is really the example of what we had in mind. And so it's a thrill to be able to recognize you for that. And I will just simply say to our audience that once or twice a year we take a few moments out to recognize one of our alumni who has really achieved incredible things and is achieving incredible things and is a model for all of us. And so this is that day for us this year to recognize Steve Palmer with the Professional Achievement Award. I hope if you haven't done so already, you'll pick up a copy of our magazine outside of this room and read the article that we've written about Steve. We're enormously proud of you, Steve, and we want to recognize you. We also want Amy to come up. Would you come on up, Amy, with us while we do this?
Yeah.
Yeah. super. Because we know this award really is an award for both of you. So I'm not going to read through the whole thing. I'm going to just truncate it a little bit. But Steve Palmer and Amy, for your ethical leadership, your entrepreneurial spirit, and your enduring loyalty to Utah State University, we are proud to present you with the 2022 John M. Huntsman School of Business Professional Achievement Award. Congratulations.